You start anytime.
All right. Hey everybody, welcome to the Logan Power Show. It's me, your host, Calvin Logan, live here at For Your Glory International Ministries, here in Somerville, South Carolina. Well, I got with me to my left, November the 5th, the time. We make a decision who you want to choose to be mayor of North Charleston, South Carolina. We have to make right decisions. He's a returning guest here at the Logan Power Show. We want to ask some more things, what's going on, and why he should be the right candidate for the job. The one and only Mr. John Singletary. How you doing, sir?
Fine, how are you doing?
Glad to have you there.
Always a pleasure.
So, November the 5th is a big day.
Yep.
We've had a lot of different conversations since we had the big debate last year in November. You came to us again in December, had some people in the studio audience asked some very tough questions. You answered them very articulately and a lot of information. The biggest thing that we want to figure out now that I ask, North Charleston it's a prosperity type of city. All different angles of business growth, not too much diversity, but a lot of business growth. People are flourishing from a business owner aspect. What would it take to get change? Because you hear the people always say, nobody's going to come November 5th to vote. You always hear the actual stigma is that people don't vote and people are not really ready to hear change. What would it take for change to come in North Charleston?
Change in the mayor is what it would take. You know, North Charleston is a strong mayor, weak council city in terms of the policy. That means that the authority in many of the things in the city and the direction it goes comes from the seat of the mayor. And so if people were to simply get out and change the person they're voting for, it would change the direction of the city. We consider North Charleston one of the richest cities in the state, the most in terms of the retail sales. And for the past 30, 35 years, it's been like that. However, when it comes to that prosperity being shared throughout the city, it's not done. We have a lot of the people in North Charleston who are perishing in a paradise. We're talking about 100,000 plus people with more than $100 million in the budget, and yet we've got one of the highest unemployment rates in the state in North Charleston that happens to coincide with the areas in which it has the highest crime rate. So what that says is that if you want to impact the crime rate, you do that by putting jobs and contracts into those areas and decreasing the rate of unemployment. It can be done. However, there is a strategic plan to gentrify certain areas, and as a result, that is what causes the high crime rate. The administration is purposely not putting the resources back into the communities that need it the most. When we consider for North Charleston, it is one of the hubs for the Tri-County area. Tri-County has about 800,000 people in it, 36 cities, 3 counties, and North Charleston sits in all 3 counties. The BCD called, the Berkeley Charleston Dorchester Council of Government, is very instrumental in financing for all 3 counties. But when we consider what is being done, transportation for instance, people talk about Carter. Well, Carter basically is a shell that sits on top of a company called Transdev. Transdev does all of the administration for the Carter system. And they literally take the money out of the Tri-County area, stick it into a depository transfer account. So immediately the money goes back to France. These are the kinds of things that are happening that our public is not aware of, that we must continually educate our people on. I can go on and on, but I want to get to the next question. In a nutshell, in order to change what happens in North Charleston, we have to become more informed, more educated, and change the administration starting with the mayor.
Got it. So education piece, cognitive. The problem that we have is we always hear a good speech, and we hear it a lot, and we hear change, real change. You mentioned if I change it with the mayor, what would you do differently? Because from a business perspective, if you're like a high business owner, you love where it's going. But you mentioned that the people that lacking, the ones who are below the $13 an hour, the ones that are making maybe $10 an hour, 9, 8, the 11, the ones that work in the fast food restaurants who are barely getting above water. How are you going to speak to those people if you were given the opportunity to be mayor of North Charleston?
Well, in terms of the businesses,
yes.
Even though we have businesses here, people are coming. They are coming as a result of, for instance, Boeing that has come. The mayor had nothing to do with that. This city, North Charleston, was actually, at inception, the 7th largest city in the state of South Carolina. 3 years later, 1975, it became the 3rd largest. We're still the 3rd largest, so we haven't grown from there. When we talk about Boeing coming to the area, we want to make sure that for the companies that come, they're good corporate citizens, that they pay their economic impact fee, that they make sure that they pay a livable wage. If you're at a family of 5, $15 an hour, which some advocate for, puts you at a poverty level. $25 an hour is the national average. And so we want these companies to come in and to be good corporate citizens by paying a livable wage. Now, as a mayor, I support businesses coming, and even as far as many federal funds that can come that can be offset in terms of their expenses, used for offsetting their training costs. I would take those funds and give to those companies to offset training costs so that it now becomes advantageous for them to pay the $25 an hour because it's not costing them out of their pocket.
Got it.
It's a situation where I'm partnering with them so that that company will be able to have its highest profit margin and at the same time put back into the community. When it comes to those who are not receiving as a result of what's going on now in the city, there's absolutely no reason whatsoever that the city, being the richest city in the state of South Carolina, should have the poverty that it has in the areas that it has in North Charleston. For instance, when we talk about affordable housing, recently the mayor and the council unanimously denied a permit for affordable housing on Russelldale. Why would you deny a permit for affordable housing when you're saying that or claiming that you want affordable housing? The only reason would be it is an ulterior motive that is more primary, and that is to gentrify the area. If you're trying to push people out and someone's bringing affordable housing in, then that's contrary to your purpose. And so that's why the affordable housing was denied. When it comes to the jobs, we consider the city, in terms of crime capital of the state. We have in excess of 400 people on the police force, a $35 million budget. Less than 90 of those happen to be African American. And so when we consider the resources of the city, they're not being evenly distributed because African Americans are 50% of the population. Caucasians happen to be around 38 to 40%, Hispanic and Asians about 10 to 12%. And so when we consider taking the resources, whether it be jobs, contracts, jobs, $66 million at the city, we have 62% of the population getting about $10 million, while $56 million goes to the other side. When we consider the contract, $75 million in contracts, while $2 million goes to 62% of the population. These are the kinds of unfair things that not only cause the crime rate to be high, but it causes businesses to come in and to assist the city when it comes to gentrification, because they've got a misnomer when it comes to those areas. For instance, Cherokee. The city has abandoned Cherokee. There's absolutely no grocery store there. The reason why no grocery store is there is simply because the city has denied a developer who asked to build one there, submitted plans. However, they denied it simply because they're trying to gentrify the area.
Wow. So, because gentrification is such a high that you have for North Charleston, and it's a known fact. I mean, you can do your research. You can go on North Charleston's website. You can see they have their what's called their income statement for what's been made. The $100 million is a fact. That is a fact. What he's talking about, what the area he's referring to, down Rivers Avenue, there was a promise to be put right across from the McDonald's. It's further down when you hit the little crossroads in north. There was supposed to be an actual grocery store put there. That place is still leveled, along with the VA center that North Charleston rebought back. That's still absent with nobody there. Big tall building is sitting there worth millions of dollars, but nobody's using it, or the doors ain't open. So how can we fix the voting line? That was your biggest problem 4 years ago. You had a voting line situation to where, I don't know if y'all ever looked, this voting line they have for North Charleston, I don't know if they made a crossword puzzle or it's like a spot of a leopard, but like a patch here that says North Charleston. A patch here, that's Charleston. A patch here is Dorchester County. And the people that's in Dorchester County that pay North Charleston taxes, but when they call 911, the Berkeley Sheriff Department comes, but the mayor of North Charleston determines their livelihood. How do we fix that? 'Cause that's the craziest thing I ever heard in my life.
Well, you know, North Charleston sits in all three counties. It sits in Charleston County, it sits in Berkeley County, and Dorchester County. The primary voters are in Charleston County and in Dorchester County. And even though it's situated like that, there are some areas in the Dorchester County area that your county seat is St. George, but because of the location, you've been annexed into the city of Charleston. In a situation like that, you may, if you look at Charleston County, for instance, in the precincts there, it's spelled out which precincts you vote for. But you have to call Dorchester to find out, there are 14,000 people that are situated over there that are in precincts that if you look at what they give you from the state and the Charleston County Board of Elections, you'll miss those people. You'll miss those people altogether. So we have to do a better job at educating people in terms of annexation, what has been done and who is included. North Charleston has grown primarily because of annexation. And as a result of that growth because of annexation, it has caused some growing pains that they haven't straightened out. What we would simply do is make sure that the boundary lines when it comes to the city of Charleston is very clearly defined. And that anyone inside of the boundary of North Charleston will be able to vote. We presently have approaching 8,000 African Americans in North Charleston who cannot vote because strategically they have not been allowed to be annexed in the city, and about 3,000 Caucasians who cannot vote because they happen to be in areas that are also with African Americans. And so we've got over 10,000 people in the city of North Charleston that are being taxed in some way that cannot vote. That's a taxation without representation. That's part of the reason why we are here in America, is because we choose as Americans to say if we're going to give our tax dollars, then we should be able to be involved in the process of government and making decisions on who governs us. Now, in addition to that, we've got an administration where a mayor refuses to even come out and listen to the people. If you've got someone who refuses to hear your issues prior to being elected, certainly they're not going to listen to them afterwards. So that plays into the issues with the annexation, that we have some growing pains as a result of the large amounts of annexation that have taken place. And they took place primarily to enlarge the base for the mayor in terms of numerical majority. Those were areas that happened to be predominantly white that he wanted to annex in order to put those votes on the table, because it's a percentage of the vote that you end up expecting in terms of participation.
Wow. So how are you able to combat that? Because a lot of times that's 11%. You're pretty much talking about 11% out of out of 100 that's got taken off the board. So you're pretty much you're looking about 89% comes that can vote. But the problem is, out of 89%, less than 9% vote year after year. So how are you able to get the other 80% to say, hey, you need to make a change? Because this is always the argument I hear all the time. The current administration has brought Bone. The current administration brought these other companies, just come into play, have been brought here because of that current administration. And I hear it, but I'm trying to grasp the fact is like, okay, well, let's be honest, certain things was already here. You just fell into a good time. It's like a coach who fell on a great basketball team, like the Golden State Warriors, for an example. That was Mark Jackson's team. Steve Curtis came in just came on as a coach, and he just went with the prosperity because he fell into the laps of it. Just like the Air Force Base, North Charleston Air Force Base, that was already built in place, established for that. So how are you able to combat that? Because that's the argument that people always say, that hey, the previous administration been for 20 plus years, has done X, Y, and Z. How do you speak to that?
We educate them. It's the truth of the matter. The truth of the matter is this, that you don't allow someone to run the cart in the ditch, and then when they help get it out, praise them for getting it out. They're the ones who ran it in the ditch. Let's take a look at the city of North Charleston. As I said earlier, in 1972, its inception, it was the 7th largest city in the entire state. 3 years later, prior to this administration, it became the 3rd largest. It has now grown from that. When we consider, at one point, we had a Navy base, Air Force, Marine Depot, Army, all the branches of the service here in North Charleston. And under this administration, they basically left. Now, the reasons why they left, it's a little bit in terms of getting into, that deals with politics at a national level. But at any rate, under this administration, we ended up losing those things. This city has grown in spite of the present administration. You're going to have a certain amount of growth in a city no matter what. When we consider North Charleston, that should be an international city, but it is not. We have in North Charleston the largest international airport in the state. We have one of the, in terms of ports and production, one of the highest production ports in the world when it comes to steel. When we consider we have one of the best rail systems, we have an excellent system in terms of trucking. Those are what you have in terms of transportation. We should have a much larger international presence in the world than we do. Okay. So we're being underutilized. We're talking about 100,000+ people in North Charleston, where we've got the highest crime rate, highest unemployment in certain areas in the state, and we're talking about a selective area where there may be some growth. It is not fair to inform the public, for instance, voting, that it is because of this administration that you are allowed to vote, when the reason why a certain sector of the population can only vote because the Department of Justice came in and said that you have got to allow them to vote because you're taxing them. And so they're taking credit for allowing those people to vote, but they're not telling the full story, because the full story is the Department of Justice came in and made them do it. So when we consider, for instance, Boeing that is here, the President Mayoral was not even at the inauguration for Boeing because he didn't bring Boeing here. Boeing was done at a much higher level that had more to do with personal relationships
with Governor
than anything else. Of people who ran the state from a government, from a governor's standpoint.
Yes.
At the time. When we consider the other companies that have come here. A lot of companies have come here simply because the citizens in the area have been taken advantage of in terms of the cost of living versus what they're being paid. The state of South Carolina is one of the few states in which there's never been a class action racial discrimination lawsuit filed and won through a process of a jury trial.
Yeah.
And so companies see that. They come here because they can take advantage of citizens that are here, pay them a lower wage, and then not be held accountable from a judicial standpoint. See, this administration is a part of that.
Got it.
And so when we consider it growing, how do we want to grow? Do we want to grow in poverty and continually perish in paradise? Or do we want to grow where all citizens are given fair opportunity, just like others? When we consider Boeing, good company. But we have to remember Boeing's history. Boeing history is out of Seattle, Washington, where Boeing had covenants, racially restricted covenants, that said that if and only if you were the maid or the gardener, if you were African American, could you step foot on their property. At no other time could you. So from the top administration down, that is pervasive in a mindset that still persists today. Because if we go out to Boeing today, we've got situations just like at North Charleston, where we've got people with GEDs in management positions with people with higher education degrees and masters of the opposite race. However, they can't even apply for those jobs. So when we consider North Charleston and we talk about the fact that it is a city that, in spite of the present administration, has grown, we can't give them credit for holding us back because we could be much further along. Got it,
got it. And what I want you all who are listening to North Charleston, what he's talking about is either look at it as a North Charleston is, I look at it like this. They say every 8 years is going to be a trend. Say it all the time. So to give an example, if Donald Duck was running the United States of America, we would still flourish. I'm being straightforward with y'all. It's an 8-year span. You watch it. From 92 to 2000, we were in love. No issues, no wars, no nothing. That's a fact. From 2000 to 2008, hell came to the forefront. We were in poverty. We had issues. We were in wars with everybody and his mom. 2008, 2016, we just getting back on our feet. Worst time we had. We're getting back on our feet, but still we're coming up. 2016 to now, stock market's great. Everything is great. But I promise you, 2028 gonna be hell on earth because there are trends. There's statistical data, that analysis that comes up all the time. So when you talk about with North Charleston, if we think about when you talk about international, if the airport was expanded by maybe 3 miles, maybe 4, prices would drop, literally cut in half by hundreds. So the normal ticket from North Charleston to, say, I don't give an example, Chicago, it's like $300-400. But with the right expansion of the actual airport, would drop that cost by 100 or 2 because you got more traffic coming in. So that we didn't talk about. So that's one thing you made a good point on. You talked about also that we are the right to work. That's the actual law. State of South Carolina with the right to work, where the employer can fire you for no apparent reason at all. That's the state of South Carolina. That's an actual law. It's been embedded for over a decade and still going on. The reason why more business come here is because it's crab in a barrel. It means if I put a nice hot meal in front of starving, hungry people, they don't care if it's been there for a day or been there for 5 years. I'm gonna grab them and eat it. They're not gonna look at it and actually look at who made it, how they made it, what are the ingredients for it. It just smells good and looks good, but it could nearly kill you.
Yeah.
So pretty.
Has a $23 billion a year budget. The state's entire budget is only $20 billion. So Boeing alone has a budget much larger than the whole state's budget.
Got it.
They've got an obligation to do more than just come here and pay slave wages. They should be a good corporate citizen and pay a livable wage. We want to see them prosper. And that's why I say that much of the funding that would come in that could be used to help them with training, we would give it to them. We would give them a larger tax credit. As long as they're a good corporate citizen, pay their fair share of the economic impact fee, pay their fair share of wages, because we look at the demographics and we believe that parity is the best way to go. Based on the demographics is how you hire and promote within, because then there can be no complaining about racial inequality, because every sector of the population gets their fair share.
Got it.
Based on demographics. You know, when the economic impact fee was not paid, CCSD ended up saying that it impacted them and caused the school system to then not be able to educate because they didn't have the funding that they were expecting to come in.
Got it.
And so it snowballs and trickles down when we have someone at the top getting the lion's share of the labor force at a cheap price and not putting back into the community.
Got it. So, getting down to what we're gonna, get down to this. I know we can be here all day because, like I said, you have a plethora of knowledge.
Well, thank you.
And for me, I want to know what it's going to take to really address your other people you're running against. Because you hear all the time, people say, I'm better than you in this, that. Are any other things going to come out like last minute against you like it did 4 years ago? And what I mean by that, crazy, you were technically by the polls, you were destined to change North Charleston 4 years ago.
Okay.
I remember like it was yesterday.
Mm-hmm. You
were on our show. Things were really changing. All of a sudden, crazy story came out about you in October. About you had an escort service, right? No video, but some video they had of you. No type of mug shot that you can actually show. And, I'm just saying this.
What they said was that I was involved in a solicitation case.
Exactly.
With a minor,
Mm-hmm.
that they cannot produce the name of the minor. They have never had a court trial
Yes.
for this alleged solicitation. We are now still in court concerning that at the appellate court. The city has admitted that they have fabricated the information. In fact, their exact statement was, there is nothing wrong or with a alteration of documents. But they see nothing wrong with altering the documents. And we'll put it out on the website for people to see. But like I said, it's at the appellate court now. Not only that, the city has recently fabricated new documents concerning that. The day that they said that I had a bond hearing, in which they're televised now, I was actually at the Department of Justice in Columbia, where I was signed in by a federal agent for the Department of Justice. We proved that. So then they came back and said that, well, we didn't give him a bond hearing. We just allowed him to walk out the jail and go home. Well, it's at the bond hearing that you read them their rights, you tell them their constitutional rights, what the charges are. And so after that, allowing me to go, and they did go home, what they said was that we had a trial in absentia. So there are certain things that deals with the trial in absentia that are requisite. They are required. For instance, you have to inform the person that here are your charges, and if you do not come to the court hearing, then we will proceed in your absence. That has to be on the record. It's not there because it didn't happen.
Got it.
When we talk about the case overall, like I said, it's at the appellate court. I filed a defamation case in which they produced fraudulent documents to the court, gave to the court, and the court on a 12B6, which is a failure to slay the claim for which relief could be granted, dismissed the case. However, it will be coming back because of the intrinsic fraud. We've got an attorney who produced a fraudulent document and submitted to the court to get the judge to do the wrong thing in terms of the order. That's one of the reasons why I'm running. If we take a look, for instance, at the judicial system in North Charleston, the ACLU and the National Criminal Association for Lawyers produced a document. It's in the report that you have. And that document says this, that in 30 minutes, North Charleston did 23 bond hearings. 23 bond hearings in 30 minutes. Now, that's not enough time to even read the charges. A little over a minute for each one that they put people in jail. The North Charleston judicial system is a rogue system that denies constitutional rights to citizens in North Charleston. And that's one of the reasons why I'm running. This is not the first time where not only documents have been fabricated by the city, but that justice in terms of due process, equal protection of the law, has been denied. When we take a look at, for instance, the Walter Scott situation, the incident report for that says that not only did the officers provide CPR to him, but that he also attacked the officer and took the taser. The videotape shows that that's just an untrue. It's not true. It's a flat lie. So they doctored up the incident report. This is not, like I said, the first time something like that's happened. So over and over, and in this case that deals with me, we're talking about Harv Jacobs, a former city employer who worked for North Charleston, came to my office, admitted that he'd not seen any type of report to substantiate what he was saying. I provided for him the documentation for a class action lawsuit, several people for the mayor of North Charleston, sexual harassment, where the documents, again, are out there. And this is a case in which our citizens have paid millions of dollars of taxpayer dollars that have come out of our tax dollars. The citizens aren't aware of it. In addition to that, they've kept it undercover, paid millions of dollars to attorneys downtown who are off of Broad Street in order to cover up the things that he's done with the city. So I have no reservations whatsoever about going on television, bringing my documentation. Let the city bring theirs. The only thing that we are asking in that situation is that we be given a fair trial, where we literally go into court. See, the whole issue now is that they refuse to give me a fair trial on the situation because they have admitted that I can prove my case. And so they're fighting to keep me out of court versus allowing me to go. This is, to my knowledge, the first time in which you've got a supposedly criminal conviction based on a document where they took whiteout and on an incident report, on a ticket, they put 11 places where they used whiteout to erase the information, including the judge's name, and put a new judge on the document, which we'll put out on the Facebook page. And yet, they're claiming that they've got a conviction without a trial. Everyone in America knows, for a criminal case, you're entitled to a jury trial.
Due process, yes, sir.
It has not happened in this case, simply because the city is well aware and they know that they will be held accountable if we were to be able to get it to court.
Amen. And for those that are watching right now, the reason why I bring that up is because a lot of times what we do, we miss smoke and mirrors. Smoke and mirrors is something that we live by in the United States of America. We take 90 seconds of somebody, we don't read the full documentation, we don't look at everything, and we have those back and forth battles. See, I'm the kind of person, I stand for righteousness. I don't care if you're white, black, Hispanic, Asian, doesn't matter. But I know what God made me. He made me an African-American man, and my people are one of the most hurting culture when it comes to injustice, and especially when it comes to the judicial system. He ain't got to lie, I'm just telling you the truth. The reason why I brought up to this man is because I told people, I said, man, that man's going somewhere. We were going somewhere. And without a doubt, crazy story came out, and because how we live in a 90-second bubble, threw off some votes. And we had some people that did run 4 years ago, and I'm not going to name names, but I believe they were sort of what we call clownish. And I'm being straightforward with you. I'm like this person. I'm true. So anyone who comes to the Logan Power Show, I don't care who you are. You could be Donald Duck. You could be the smartest person in the world. But I want to hear your truth. And I'm going to call it out when I'm going to call it. And the thing is, what I want to see real change. I'm tired of us living this fake world that we're not knowing that somebody's hurt, nobody's going through. So on November the 5th, you make a decision. And so you got coming up. You have our current administration, Keith Summey, I pray the best for him. You have Mr. John Singletary, you have Pastor Thomas Dixon, you have Mrs. Ashley Peel, great person as well, and Mr. John Doted, I believe.
It's Floyd Dodd.
Floyd Dodd, I'm sorry. I got it. I said, I haven't got him yet. I asked him to come on. I haven't got him yet, but hey, I'd love to have him as well, because I want to hear what he got to say. See, that's the kind of person I am. I like to know where you're coming from. Shake your hand, get to meet you, get you where your heart is. Because if someone asks me, do you know who's running for North Charleston as a mayor? Absolutely, I know. Some I got their phone numbers. Some I don't. And I pray the best for them. And that's what I want you all to do. Make a decision. There's so many things we could talk about on how the news, and I'm gonna be straightforward, I don't get in trouble when I say this. The news will put something out there, but when it's wrong, they will never go back and retract their statement they say. Happens all the time. You could be dead wrong. Dead wrong. But the problem is we don't do that. It's because, you know why? Because it would lose our character and our fiber. So I want you all who are watching, November the 5th, Singletary, I appreciate you coming, educating us, and
this book that you have.
Yes, sir. The book I have.
We have two. One gave demographics of what the city is all about and the opportunities for those who get the lion's share of the book.
Yes, sir.
The most successful campaign in North Charleston in terms of unseating the present mayor and to get fundamental fairness for the citizens was run in 2015 by our campaign. Here's why I say that. Previously, in 2007, we only had 2,500 African Americans to vote. 2011, we had 2,200. So on a downward spiral, in 2015, we began to educate people, tell them the truth, what was going on, and we mushroomed from 2,200 in 7 months in educating people with a purpose. We were able to move that needle to 5,513. That became the lion's share of all votes in North Charleston because Caucasians voted at a rate of 4,753. Asians at 89, 67 Hispanics, and 13 Native Americans. And so 53% of all votes, we went from less than 20% to 53% of all votes. Now, in Montgomery, they're 53% of the population, just elected their first African American mayor after a 200-year stint in terms of from their inception for running their city. We're 53% of the vote in North Charleston. There's no reason why we cannot do the very same thing. So it was the most successful in terms of pushing the needle of participation from around 20% up to now 53%. When we look at the other book, of course, is for citizens of all races to understand that there's some critical issues. We've got our crime rate to deal with, which we can. We know how. The issue is that for the present administration, crime is profitable. And that's why they allow it to exist, particularly in certain areas that they can contain, to pull down federal funds so they can divert them other places. Housing. The Impediments to Fair Housing study says that what we should do is spend 30% of our income in order to attain rent or mortgage, whereas now many people are paying 60 to 70% in North Charleston. And so when we consider the housing, my plan is that not only do we decrease crime by bringing jobs in and giving them livable wages, but also that we allow for housing to be done at a rate of 30% of your income. That's what the CDBG funds are for, to help with housing for those in those areas. However, most of those funds are given to Metanoia, who use those funds to stockpile houses in the name of Metanoia. And while they're stockpiling them in the name of Metanoia, they have the potential of getting $1.2 million in rent every year on funding that was given for the community. When we consider the outside of the affordable housing, the education system, our education, there's no reason anyone could tell us that we do not know how to educate. Why? Because we have the number one school in the nation sitting in North Charleston. So we know how to do it. We absolutely have no reason to have more failing schools in North Charleston than any city in the nation. So we got both ends of the spectrum because we choose to decide where we put the resources. Comprehensive community centers, that's one of the things that we're going to bring that not only allows us to build an AAU multi-sports complex, but comprehensive community centers that double as a center where you are able to use as a natural disaster. When people in a hurricane, for instance, need someplace to go. In that center, there's a satellite police station. There's also a Franklin C. Feder type medical services. So you go to the shelter with police protection as well as medical facilities. Couldn't be better. Event spacing, classrooms. We're talking about indoor basketball, indoor swimming pool. These are the things that we're going to put in the community for the comprehensive community centers. When we look at this booklet,
yes, sir,
on the front of it, we're talking about less crime, more jobs, better pay, because it is statistically proven. If you have a job that's slave wages, your actions in terms of crime is not going to be any different than no job at all, because it does not serve the purpose intended. When we consider the community resources, we have a situation where our community resources are taken and put onto a select few in North Charleston. If you want to take a look at the implementation plan for North Charleston, go to the city's website, go to government, you can go down to the area for finance and look at the implementation plan. Hundreds of millions of dollars spent, but yet not shared throughout the community. When you can spend millions in a dog park, but refuse to spend $100,000 in a community center for kids to play, then it's a clear, disproportionate division of the resources. We talk about parity of contracts, $75 million with $2 million going to 62% of the population. That $75 million in contracts there, plus other contracts, equate to $320 million every single year denied to that African American community. We talked about the municipal justice, the education, affordable housing, the comprehensive centers, and it gets back to accountability and transparency. We presently have absolutely no accountability when it comes to finances for the city. Millions of dollars that is unaccounted for. For instance, the recent conversation with the mayor said that there was not $141 million in surplus. It's right there on the balance sheet. Any citizen go in there and take a look at it. $141 million in surplus money at the city, but yet they tell us there's certain things we can't do.
Wow.
I'll wrap it up there.
Got it. Wait. I want you to know that that's why I tell you knowledge is power, but knowing the information how to apply it is big. November the 5th, that's the time you make a decision on who do you want to become the next mayor of North Charleston. Hey family, I know who I chose a long time ago, but I tell you, keep on watching the Logan Power Show, watch what we're putting out there, who we put onto you to see, and make the right decision, okay? And we love y'all. We'll see y'all next week. That's it.